Let's see if we are live. Refresh. Yes. Okay. All right. Hello. I should be looking up here, not down there where my laptop is. I'm a little bit overdue with doing this video. This is obviously, as the title says, 10 of the best manga I read in 2021. It's very difficult to narrow these down, as I did read a lot of manga in 2021, and unfortunately, some of them had to face the chopping block off of this list. But I'm happy with the selection that I've got, and I hope maybe my words towards these series will maybe inspire you to go out and read them yourself. Some of them are still readily available. Others may only be available digitally, or some may not be available at all. But I still want to talk about them. So this is a list that's in no particular order. I don't really like putting an order to the manga that I talk about in like a top 10 list. They're also different from each other. It's difficult to compare and contrast them with each other anyway. So this is just 10 series that I really enjoyed, in no particular order. And I've got a couple of people in the comment section already, so thanks for joining. I've got Zach, aka NZ Anime Manga, Puffin, David, let's go, thank you. So I don't want this to be too long of a stream, because I want this to be kind of more accessible for rewatch later if people do decide to rewatch it. So it's not going to be like an hour-long thing or anything. I'm just going to give brief synopsis of each series, maybe just read the blurb off of the back and give a couple of personal thoughts and opinions. But I hope you enjoy. I hope the sound is coming through. Excuse me. So I guess I'll start with the one series that I don't believe is available anymore. One thing that I read this last year for the first time, and that is Pikachu by Felipe Smith, a 3-volume series published by Vertical quite some time ago, quite a couple of years ago actually, maybe about 10 years or so. You can see it's got a very sort of idiosyncratic art style, kind of blends. It's a bit of a fusion between Western and Eastern graphical styles, as it is by an Argentinian American author. You can see his name here, Felipe Smith. But it was published in Japan in a manga magazine, and this is basically about a young boy called Milton. A young black kid, lives in Chicago in a rough neighborhood, and he is a die-hard otaku. I mean, like a complete weeaboo, and he just believes that Japan is this godly heaven of otaku fandomness, and he has lots of misconceptions about what it means to be Japanese. He's one of the, it basically fits the stereotype of really a modern otaku, somebody who's completely out of touch with their own culture as well as the culture of Japan. They don't see Japan as just like a normal everyday culture like everywhere else, but this otaku haven, like everywhere is like Akihabara. Obviously it's not. It's a country with a rich, diverse history. But he just, he has these misconceptions. He's absolutely obsessed with this anime series called Pikachu, obviously the title, which is this really odd sort of Fooly Cooly-esque anime that's got these really weird dances and really weird sort of catchphrases that he believes is representative of Japanese culture. It's absolutely not. So when Milton gets an opportunity to visit Japan, he wins a competition. He gets an opportunity to visit Japan. He's obviously over the moon, but then when he gets there, he's distraught to find out that people generally don't know what Pikachu is. The Peepo talk that the characters in the anime Pikachu speak isn't Japanese, but he thinks it's Japanese. So he's learned all of these catchphrases and phrases from watching anime that he thinks will make him able to communicate with people in Japan. He thinks he can speak Japanese, but he just speaks gibberish. So it's a massive culture shock for him. And then on the flip side of this, when he gets to Japan, he gets embroiled in like Yakuza, and there's another sort of character that's like the reverse side of him, where it's like this Japanese guy who has basically learned all about American culture just from like action movies. So it's like this super violent sort of thug. And it just the nice sort of juxtaposition between Milton and this other Japanese Yakuza thug who sees America as this like really cool sort of gun-toting, everyone shoots each other and everything's like an action movie. It's a nice sort of dichotomy between them. But for a 3-volume series, it's really, really good. I have to give props to the main character, the main female lead character on the cover here, Reiko, who probably gets the most character development in the entire series. She's a fantastic character. Really, really enjoyed. Anytime she was a real sort of scene stealer, and not just because of her voluptuous curves. She is much more than what her visage lets on. But yeah, Pikachu is brilliant. It's a real shame that it hasn't been reprinted, or maybe it wasn't as popular as it should have been, because I would say it's essential reading for anybody who is very interested in otakudom, Japanese culture, how a lot of Western anime fans misconstrue what it means to be an anime fan, even in Japan. Obviously people over in Japan who are anime fans, their tastes can vary vastly with what the general fandom is like in the West. So it really does sort of explore these these differences in culture, and for something that's only 3 volumes long, it really, really does it well. Not one scene or one story arc feels misplaced. Every piece of space in every single page is utilized expertly, I feel, and it's just a really funny manga with really, really endearing characters. Despite Milton, the main character, being just a complete weeaboo and otaku, he's actually really sweet. He's not like one of those like super obnoxious weebs who he's just an asshole. He's actually just really sweet, and he comes from a rough neighborhood. He doesn't really have any friends at all who share his passion for anime and manga, and he's simply just misinformed. So it's basically a real sort of coming of age story for him as well. When he goes to Japan, he meets Reiko, he meets the other Yakuza thug, and he learns a lot. And by the end of it, without spoiling anything, he's grown a lot. He's matured. So it's a really nice coming of age story as well. And I mean, the artwork is just absolutely beautiful. Show you some color pages. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very violent and very explicit, and it's got lots of like sex and everything in it. This guy particularly is Milton's friend, who he goes to Japan with. This guy here, he's really funny, really, really funny, but a complete idiot. So anyway, that's Pikachu by Felipe Smith. It may be available on digital platforms like Comixology, and I don't know where else. It's worthwhile looking up to see if it's available on Kindle or something. I'm not entirely too sure. If not, then it's just not available. Some of the volume 1 and 2 are relatively easy to come by for a decent price, but volume 3 isn't. I had some difficulty coming across the 3rd volume. So, if you want to go read it, then you'll have to do some digging. But I would say it's definitely worth it. So that's Pikachu at my number 10 spot. I guess we'll have a look at some of the comments. Yeah. The thumbnail is a spoiler for some of the series I'll be talking about, but it's not Space Pirate Captain Harlock Puffin. In fact, I didn't actually enjoy that series. Blam, yeah, Zaki really needs to get on Blam. Blam is amazing. Bakamatsu, hello, man. Good to see you around. Good. Audio's loud and clear. That's good. Brilliant. So in summary, it's almost like stereotypes aren't a good thing to judge people's societies. Pretty much. You can get them off about £100 normally. Yeah. If you're a collector and you really, really want it, then you may have to pay over retail. But that's just the nature of out-of-print manga. Okay, so let me check my notifications. What shall I talk about next? Let's go. I haven't talked about this yet, as I neglected to record a my manga wrap-ups for the last couple of months. So this is something that I read recently, and that's Knights of Sidonia by Satomu Nihei. Really enjoyed this. This is the longest series by him that I've read, having clocked in at 15 volumes. I mean, the blurb on the back really just sort of encapsulates what it's about perfectly. And it's out of space, the far future. A lone seed ship, the Sidonia, plies the void. 10 centuries since the obliteration of the solar system, the massive, nearly indestructible yet barely sentient alien life forms that destroyed humanity's homeworld continue to pose an existential threat. So it's a deep sci-fi space adventure, a shonen one, which is very different from other works that I've read by Nihei, which are all seinen or just adult-oriented manga. But that doesn't mean that it scrimps out on the same sort of violence and gore that are staples of Nihei's storytelling and his art. Albeit it is toned down, it's still there. But it basically follows this guy here, Nagate Tanakaze, who pilots these sort of mecha robots. You can see the silhouette of it there on the back. Mecha robots to fight these indestructible aliens that pose like a threat to humanity called Gorna. And the seed ship that they're on, the Sidonia, is basically, as it says, it's a seed ship with the intended purpose of finding a new home for humanity. But all the while they're trying to fend off this ever looming, ever present threat from the Gorna, because what is the point in finding a new home for humanity if the very threat that destroyed the solar system, not just planet Earth, but the entire solar system, is still there. They need to eliminate this threat before they're even able to find a new home to settle in. So it's it starts off very much as sort of monster of the week. Like each chapter or each couple of chapters centers around a new mission. A new Gorna's been detected. Each Gorna that they defeat, the next Gorna has learned from the previous battle, or has taken knowledge or sort of assimilated the talents of the human pilots in order to pose a new, more dangerous threat. So it's sort of like as I said, a monster of the week, where each enemy is the same, i.e., they're all Gorna, but they come in waves with different abilities, and the battles that the humans have with them are therefore very different, and they have to find new ways in order to defeat the new improved Gorna threat. So it's nice like that. I mean, the first couple of volumes are like that, until it sort of, here and there you get nuggets of information as to why they're in the predicament, why they're in the situation that they're in. New characters are introduced. Because it's a shonen, it does rely somewhat heavily on like main character tropes. Like it does have heavy elements of a harem manga. In fact, it does at one point become a harem manga, which I didn't really appreciate too much. But the characters themselves are so endearing and likable that those elements, on the whole, for the most part, are kind of fun. Particular note is a character called Samugi, who, I won't spoil who or what Samugi is, but she's such a fun character, very pious and virtuous, and almost like a nun, but is like really innocent and cute, and she's just this horrible, grotesque monster, like in her appearance. It's really cute. So each of the characters, each of the girls that surround, the main character Nagate, has something to sort of contribute to those like sort of moments of brief respite between each battle with the Gorna. So I really enjoyed that sort of slice of life aspect of it, especially coming from a series by Nihei, whose other series I've read by him are a lot more solemn and depressing in tone. So this was a real nice breath of fresh air. And indeed it was actually Nihei's attempt, I would say successful attempt, at catering to a less of a niche audience. He created this with the intention of it having more mainstream appeal, and that definitely shows through. I mean, other manga by him that I've read, like Biomega and Blam and Abara, are very much show don't tell. He leaves everything open to sort of personal interpretation and you know, a lot of questions are answered and a lot of questions are unanswered. With this is the polar opposite. It is show and tell. In fact, there's so much exposition that happens in this. It's almost exhausting, and you can tell that Nihei is really making a really concerted effort to make sure that the reader is very much clued in and informed as to what's happening and why it's happening. It was annoying at times because I'm used to Nihei's other works and his other sort of means of storytelling, but I understood why it was there. Obviously, it's a shonen, it's for a younger demographic, and it needed to have that mainstream appeal. Why ever Nihei decided to make a manga like this, I'm not entirely too sure, but I think this is his sort of style from now. Like, I know his series Opossums and maybe another one as well, I'm not too sure, also seem to have that sort of mainstream appeal. I'm not sure that he will ever go back to the sort of gritty, you know, somber sort of vibes of like Blam and Biomega, but still, you know, for what it is, I really enjoyed it. The artwork is still really beautiful. I'm trying to find some good pages. Not as refined and detailed as something like Blam or Biomega. It's a lot cleaner. Characters still seem to suffer with that sort of same face syndrome. Like, he's not really good at sort of character differentiation in that regard, but you know, the monster designs are still really cool. The battles are also really cool. You can see definitely some of his sort of grittier stylization sort of showing through there in like the battle scenes and the Gorna themselves, you know, the alien monsters. You know, they're terrifying, you know, to behold. I mean, look at that. It's just, you know, you just see things like that all the time, and it's really cool. You know, it is what is to be expected of an artistic genius like Tsutomu Nihei. So that's Knights of Sidonia. I do also want to watch the anime, because I really want to know how some of the characters translate like into the animated format, because the comedy in this, which is I mean, there's never really been any comedy, or very muted comedy in his other works. The comedy in this is very it's very prevalent. So I'd like to know how that translates to anime, because it seems like this was created with the intention of it, you know, sort of branching out into you know, other sort of mediums like anime and merchandise. I mean, the Nihei designed the mechas actually by collecting like model kits and constructing them out of like just random, like a random hodgepodge assortment of parts. So I think he had that in mind, that he wanted you know, this to, you know, maybe sort of span off like a new IP, you know, a new sort of franchise. But that's really all I have to say about Knights of Sidonia without going too far into. I mean, there's a sort of view of the mecha that they use. There's no real sort of color pages, but some color pages in each volume, which are kind of nice. But yeah, Knights of Sidonia. Not my favorite Nihei work, but the only Nihei work that I've read this year. So I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to reading Opossums. So let's move on. Have a read of the comments before I continue. I need to reread Knights of Sidonia. Was one of the best sci-fi manga I've ever read. Definitely occupying the blurred spaces between shonen and seinen. Enjoyed the ending too. Yeah, me too. The ending was really good, and it kind of left it open for a sequel as well. Albeit a sequel sort of maybe years set after Knights of Sidonia. I mean, you could argue that Knights of Sidonia itself is like a soft sequel of Biomega, either Biomega or Blam. It's like a soft sequel to one of those. Puffin, if you have time, I would love to hear your thoughts on different Tatsumi works you've managed to read. Yeah, definitely. I mean, once I've read all of my Tatsumi works, I might do like an author sort of spotlight video. I do want to do some of those, as we do have enough manga of different authors like Inio Asano, Urasawa, Rumiko Takahashi, and other Gekiga authors as well. Enough to really sort of do like spotlight videos. Code provider, hello. Just here to pay my respects. Good night, boys. Night, dude. Thanks for joining, or dipping in and dipping out. I I don't know what time it is over in Japan. I think you're ahead of us, so it's probably like 3 o'clock in the morning or something over there. Okay. Anyway, what should we talk about next? Let's talk about another one that I don't think I got a chance to talk about in one of my last. I'm not sure if I did talk. I might have talked about it in my September one. Anyway, let's talk about this. Real by Takahiko Inoue. I read the first 7 volumes of Real, so I'm by no means up to date, and it may quickly become one of my favorites if I get the opportunity to get up to date with it, and Viz decide to reprint the rest of the volumes that I need from volume 8 onwards. But this is my first foray into sport manga. I had been saying for the longest time that sports manga had been something I'd neglected to get into, as I'm not really a sporty person myself. I don't watch sport, I don't play sport, and therefore I don't really want to read about sport. But I had a lot of misconceptions about this. I thought it was a sports manga, but it's a life manga. It's a struggle manga. It's living against the odds manga, striving to succeed, and facing facing incredible hardship and trying to get through against all odds. It's very much one of those heartfelt, empowering manga. And basically, it centers around 3 guys who each have a love for basketball. They either play basketball, well, they all play basketball, in fact. They watch basketball. They're really just love the sport of basketball. Each character suffers some sort of traumatic event that alters their life irreversibly. 2 of them get crippled for life. One of them loses a leg, and the other one becomes a paraplegic. And the other one, who is arguably the sort of main character out of the 3 mains, the guy on the top here, Nomiya, he was involved in a motorcycle accident where he was carrying a girl as a pillion passenger, recklessly, joyriding around, and he ended up crashing, and the girl on the back was crippled for life. So he carries this heavy burden of guilt, and basically just sort of becomes a shell of his former self. But either way, these 3 characters have suffered or caused, in Nomiya's case, irreversible pain and suffering, either to themselves or others. And it's about them losing the ability to not only walk or move or function or anything like that. It's about their redemption story. So about them sort of starting at the bottom, in hospital, having just learned that they've become crippled for life, and then going through that achingly slow process of physical rehabilitation, or in Nomiya's case, sort of learning to forgive himself. And it very much is, it's heavily character focused. It's very dramatic, very, as the name, it's a perfect name for the series. It's very real, it's very visceral, it's very relatable. So a series like this that deals with such heavy topics could easily fall into the trap of melodrama, where it just becomes just really sort of, oh god. But it doesn't. It doesn't shy away from the sort of discrimination elements when it comes to the sport, which is, I haven't even talked about the sport. It's about wheelchair basketball. It addresses the sort of discrimination that like paraplegic athletes face. That sort of wheelchair basketball is this sort of pity sport that they can't play real basketball, so let's just give them wheelchair basketball to make them feel like they're athletes, which is obviously not the case. It really goes into the sort of depths of how intricate wheelchair basketball is, and the sort of things that they've had to alter from main basketball to make it to make each player who is on a team in wheelchair basketball be fairer to one another, because obviously basically the way wheelchair basketball works, from my limited understanding, having read this, is anybody who has a physical disability can play, but obviously you have to consider that each player may have different disabilities. You know, some players will be more mobile than others, and in order to make that fair, there's like a sort of like point system, where, you know, somebody who's like a level 1 player will be a lot more mobile than somebody who's like a level 4 player. You know, maybe somebody who's only, you know, missing a leg, whereas somebody who's you know, doesn't have any bodily function from the chest down, you know, obviously they wouldn't be that mobile because they don't have the core sort of body strength that somebody who's just simply missing a leg would have. So it's really, really intricate and really, really interesting. And clearly Takahiko Inoue has an invested interest in wheelchair basketball, especially having coming from a series like what's his basketball, these really famous basketball series, Slam Dunk. Takahiko Inoue already has an invested interest in basketball, so why not wheelchair basketball? And it's just so heart-wrenching, especially like one of the characters, one of the main 3, this guy on the end here, is like a star basketball player, really arrogant, just really insufferable piece of crap, you know, school bully, and he ends up getting run over by a truck and ends up losing all of his bodily functions from the waist down. But it's very much about him sort of accepting that and coming out of the mindset of being the grade A student, the popular, you know, love interest, you know, the jock of the high school is essentially what he is. But he's still very much in this mentality. So even as he's laid in the hospital, you know, shitting himself, he's still treating everyone like crap. He's still got that immature mentality of, you know, I'm the best. So it's very much about him sort of just reversing that and sort of accepting his new reality and humbling himself. And the way Takahiko Inoue deals with that, I mean, if you've read Vagabond or anything like that, then you'll know that he's really good at sort of breaking down his characters in terms of, I mean, look at Musashi Miyamoto. He was an arrogant, you know, thug, and, you know, in the very first volume, he gets tied to a tree and, you know, he's pissing himself and crying. You know, really good at breaking down arrogant characters to just, you know, bring them back up to something a lot more stronger and tolerable. Real has those kind of characters in the wheelchair basketball element plays second fiddle to the characters. The characters and their stories are the main story, and the wheelchair basketball is just an appendage to that. You know, they all discover wheelchair basketball, you know, through different routes. You know, it's about their journeys converging into the mutual love of basketball and ultimately wheelchair basketball. So this is an incredible series. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting more volumes. I only read the first 7, and it was incredible. I know Takahiko Inoue has just got back to drawing this, you know, writing this again after a very long hiatus. So hopefully, you know, hopefully it'll bear fruit, you know, and be one of probably my all-time favorite series, as I absolutely love it. And as you would expect from any Takahiko Inoue manga, the artwork is just phenomenal. It's beautiful. I really, really enjoy it. Yeah, what more can I say? I would love to do a more sort of scripted, in-depth review. As right now I'm just sort of winging it. But I can't sing my praises of this series enough, which you could really argue with any of the series that I'm going to be talking about now, as I love talking about series that I absolutely love. So I won't say any more on Real, as we'll be here all day. So just, I do love Real. It's amazing. Okay. Oh God, we're half an hour into this already. It's probably going to be one of those hour-long videos, unfortunately. Let's have a look at the comments. Yeah, Real is so good. I was really looking forward to volume 15. Yeah, that's the latest one, I believe. Zach enjoyed Slam Dunk. This sounds really good. Fingers crossed it isn't out of print. Shall make some time this evening to start volume 1. It's out of stock at the moment. Viz haven't lost the license because they're still publishing some of the volumes, but a lot of the volumes are out of stock, unfortunately. So, I mean, I could address this in another video. Let's continue. Talk about one Jiro Taniguchi title. I mean, this was a bit of a battle for me to decide which one of the Jiro Taniguchi titles I read in 2021 was going to make the list. But I ultimately decided with A Distant Neighborhood. This is a very beautiful story about time travel and not being able to fix the mistakes of the past or undo the trauma that was bestowed by the past. It very much is about even with the power to go back in time, the events set in time are still very much set in time, no matter how much you try and change them. It's basically about this guy here, or as he is on the front cover, a young boy. Starts off with a middle-aged, as him as a middle-aged man, and he's on a train home from work, and he decides to go visit his mother's grave in his childhood city where he grew up. And while at his mother's grave, a phenomenon happens where he collapses. He sees a butterfly. I guess maybe that's symbolic of something, like a death butterfly or something. He sees a butterfly and collapses. And when he wakes up, he's 30 years in the past. He's in his adolescent 14-year-old body, but still with the sort of mental faculties, the sort of the mental maturity of a middle-aged man. So he's still obviously got the memories of who he is as a grown-up, and he's very much aware of the very unusual predicament that he's in. He's traveled back in time. So the only logical thing he can think to do is go back home to where he grew up as a kid. And lo and behold, his mum's there. His mum's still alive. His dad's around. His little sister's still his little sister. And he's like, why is this happening? How am I going to get out of this? And what shall I just act as normal? Like, do I tell anyone? And he doesn't. He basically just decides to sort of live life as he would when he was actually 14. So he doesn't tell his parents that I've just come from the future, because who would believe him anyway? And it's basically about him going back in time to try and prevent his dad from abandoning his family, and to prevent his mum from dying from an early dying early. His mum died really young. He's trying to prevent these things from happening, all the while enjoying the sort of complacency of being a teenager again, and not being a hardworking salaryman as he is in the future, and him sort of coming to the realization that, whoa, I need to get myself out of this. I've got a wife and kid. I've got a wife and daughters at home. I need to get home. So I've been here for, he ends up just months and months, like in the past. And it's basically about reconciliation and accepting that, what will be, will be. And if you've ever read anything by Taniguchi is a really, really good, again, it's really good at writing characters, believable, relatable characters, no matter how far out and ludicrous the circumstances that they're in. Taniguchi sort of he's got a really good talent for still making it feel like it's very everyday, not mundane, but just everyday and relatable. Even something like this. I mean, it's not often that Taniguchi writes something that has like science fiction elements in it. Like, if you've read anything by Taniguchi, then you know that they're very much based in reality, very grounded and very humble. And this was a nice sort of breath of fresh air, a nice sort of change of pace from what I'm normally used to from reading by him. But I was really glad that still sort of retains those essential, feelings. It still has that same sort of cadence of you can picture yourself in this situation. It still feels very relatable, and it's slow enough pace that you can kind of it's almost like a relaxing read, even though it's got more drama than what a Taniguchi work would normally have. It's still very much, I mean, just the artwork alone kind of gives you that sense of relaxation, similar to like The Walking Man. Like, there's really nice views of the Japanese countryside, and obviously the cover and things like that. And because it goes back in time like 30 years, you get to see like what his hometown looked like and how rural it was like back in the day. So there are like many scenes in the manga where he's just kind of walking around and going to like little convenience stores where he used to go when he was a kid, and sort of monologuing to himself, in his own mind and things like that. It still very much is slow paced, but it's a slow burn in that, the payoff is good. It's not just slow for the sake of being slow with no sort of reward after it. It's a comfortable pace, which is something I always appreciate with Taniguchi manga. It's a nice sort of, it's just relaxing, despite how dramatic the sort of subject matter is. And out of all of the Taniguchi work that I've read, this one definitely is up there with one of my favorites, probably next to The Walking Man, in fact. There's the sort of familial drama that the whole story is staged around. It's relatable to so many people, your father abandoning you, or a parent dying, when you're still young. These are real life traumas for many, many, many people. And how that trauma is dealt with by a middle-aged man in an adolescent's body is it's done so subliminally. It's sublime, rather. That's the word I was looking for. It's a very, very it's a very thought-provoking manga, and I think you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of this if you were the sort of same sort of reflective, internal sort of person. Like, I very much I'm very introverted and very sort of introspective, like that. I often think about my past, mistakes I've made, things that I would do differently, or things that I wouldn't do differently, in my past. I'm still very young myself, obviously, but it's one of those manga to read where if you're if you're the kind of person who ponders a lot, but I guess daydreams a lot and thinks a lot, and you could get a lot out of this manga. It spoke to me on that level, and I really, really enjoyed it for that. It's very dreamlike, and I loved it. So that's A Distant Neighborhood, Jiro Taniguchi. And I would really recommend any of his works, to be honest. He's a fantastic author. May he rest in peace. Okay, before I move on, let's check out the comments. Let's have a drink as well. Yeah, I can see you guys discussing the difficulty in finding real volumes. Spicy Tuna, thanks for joining. A Distant Neighborhood was one of my favorite reads in 2021 as well, based on your recommendation. Oh, awesome. It's really thought-provoking manga that really made you think about what's important in life. Absolutely agree. You're singing on the same hymn sheet as me with that Spicy Tuna. So I'm really glad you enjoyed it. Puffin. Nowadays, most of the people seem to be calling Taniguchi's works boomer manga. Yeah, well, there's one of his other manga that I have, A Journal of My Father, very much is that from what I've read as well. It's very much sort of a generation specific manga, aka boom manga. I haven't read it yet, so I can't really make a formal judgment on it. Zach, what is it with Volume 8's been out of print? Yu-Gi-Oh! 8 and 9 were impossible to find 3 to 5 years ago. Likewise, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3 single volume 6 and 8 were out of print for ages back in 2012. That's a very specific thing. I'm sort of out of touch with the manga community zeitgeist. Just been rereading my various series between regular novels. Currently on Heretics of Dune. Oh, nice. Yeah, I've got the 3-volume Frank Herbert collection, Dune collection, which is obviously Dune, Children of Dune, and Dune Messiah that I'm going to start. So is Heretics of Dune, isn't that written by Frank Herbert's son, or is that Frank Herbert as well? I'd be interested to know, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure Frank Herbert's son took over the extended canon after the initial 3 Frank Herbert books. I could be wrong. I haven't read it, but anyway, off topic. Starfruit Books. Hey, I need to pick up some of your manga that you're publishing. thanks for joining. Thanks, I got to get that one. Okay, right, moving on. What shall I talk about next? How am I going to talk about that one? Let's talk about the 2 dark manga that I really enjoyed reading this year. First being Devilman by Go Nagai. Oh boy, this was good. I absolutely loved Devilman. And Devilman is basically the proto-Berserk. It very much set the standard for violent, visceral, gory manga. That was to follow in the subsequent decades. This is a staple piece. I'm very proud to own this. Let's read the blurb at the back. So Go Nagai's groundbreaking classic, hordes of demons, once thought entombed forever in the underworld, have now returned to Earth. Evil and corruption begin to seep into our world as demons seize human hosts. Mankind's only hope for salvation is to use the demon's power against them, and only a pure-hearted man like Fudo Akira can hope to do so without losing his humanity. Once little more than a crybaby, Akira now wields the terrible power of a devil, yet holds the innocent soul of a man. Devilman. It's so good. I mean, the blurb on the back describes it perfectly. It very much is, as I sort of described with Knights of Sidonia, it's a monster of the week style manga where each chapter or each couple of chapters deals with a new threat, a new monsters come to Earth, a new demons come to Earth, a new sort of host is, being taken over, and Devilman has to sort it all out, fight them, just excuse me. Devilman has to fight them, and the nice sort of dichotomy between Fudo Akira's sort of delicate nature. He's very much a pacifist, and the demon that resides within him, Amon, who obviously is like an arch demon. He's like one of the strongest, best demons. That sort of dichotomy between them two. I mean, you don't ever get to see Amon. You don't actually get to know Amon as a person. Like, he doesn't actually have his own personality. Like, Akira very much just uses his powers. So even when Akira is in his Devilman form, he is still Akira. He still retains his humanity, which is interesting to see when he's having to fight off the hordes of hell, and he's got no other could be a wind. He's got no other option than to fight to the death with these creatures, in order to save his friends and humanity at large. But not only is it about Akira or Fudo Akira, Go Nagai very much is making a statement with this manga about the follies of violence and war, and that becomes very apparent the more deeper into the manga you get, particularly in the latter half. It very much is a very nihilistic statement from Go Nagai on what he potentially may believe the outcome of humanity is going to be. We are the creators of our own doom, and no more is that encapsulated through the sort of demons that humanity has to face. I guess if you look at it from a metaphorical sense, you could say that they're sort of battling themselves, as a lot of the demons that present themselves are, especially the stronger, more dangerous ones, are very human-like in nature. Obviously, you get the sort of more twisted demons that are just, sort of like this here, sort of like cosmic horror monsters, very sort of Lovecraftian, but the smarter demons, the more reasonable, I guess, demons who've got some form of sentience, are very sort of human-like, and quite often. I mean, it's been ages since I've read it now. It was early last year that I read this, but from what I recall, some of the demons that Akira has to fight, there's a dialogue between them over who is righteous and who is not, which these are sort of tropes that would pervade later sort of battle manga. This is very proto for many genres. It's very much set the standard for what was to become, and the art style, albeit it's dated, it's still really nice. I really enjoyed the sort of art style. There is some absolutely gorgeous artwork in this. See the color pages there. And the darkness in it, some of the topics that it covers, you wouldn't expect to find in even a shonen manga today. This was very ahead of its time in that regard. There's nobody is safe from violence. The main characters die. There's child death. Killing like pets. It is rough. It is really rough. And quite frankly, this is one of the very few manga that has genuinely shocked me. And when I finished reading it, I remember it was late at night, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning when I finished reading this, and it affected me so badly that I got dressed and I went out to the car and I went for a long drive, just like in the middle of the night, because I needed to sort of just process it. I didn't want to sleep. It's not that I was scared or anything. It affected me. It was such a powerful emotion that I had. Obviously I won't spoil the ending in any way, but the ending is so impactful, and it leaves such an impression that I don't think you could go away from this manga or put this manga down and be like, okay, yeah, that was okay, or just be sort of nonchalant or just indifferent about it. It's edgy and it's cool, but the way that it does it is it smashes the boundary. It smashed my expectations, and I've read a lot of like messed up manga. Berserk even. You can definitely see how Miura got influenced by Go Nagai's sentiments, particularly in this. Having reflected on Berserk, having read this, a lot of the sort of groundbreaking elements in Devilman, in terms of the melodrama and the shocking twists, that is riddled so much in the Golden Age arc, particularly in Berserk. That shock that he got from the Golden Age arc, certain sort of points in that, you could say, are directly lifted to a certain degree from this. And I'm really glad that I read Berserk first and then went back to this to see kind of where it all started, or at least thematically where it started, because it allowed me to appreciate this so much more, especially with having been a big lover of Berserk, and knowing to a certain degree that this was involved in the formulation of Berserk to a certain degree. There's just so many levels that I appreciated this on. And Akira is a cool guy. He is cool. He's very cool, and so is his best friend, the blonde haired, the guy on the cover there, who sort of is involved with the whole demon slaying, monster fighting thing. Here's some more cool artwork. Another demon there. Again, I really can't sing the praises enough for this. Here's another cool chapter with Joan of Arc. I believe that was Joan of Arc, at least anyway. Included in these collections is also Shin Devilman, which is a series of short stories where Akira and the other guy, I can't remember his name for some reason, they travel through history, to really important points in history, like the French Revolution, Nazi Germany, obviously the 100 Years' War, where they meet Joan of Arc, sort of trying to prevent demons who were directly involved in those events, who were integral to causing that world-changing stuff to happen. Trying to sort of rewrite history. It's pretty interesting. It's a nice sort of break from the main story. But yeah, no, it was awesome. Devilman, it really is as good as what people say. You can see, I think that's Nike of Samothrace, chapter dealing with her. I completely forgot about that chapter. Pretty cool chapter, more nice color pages. But yeah, Devilman, incredible, absolutely incredible. And it has a lot of rereadability. I mean, I'm just flicking through pages now and seeing things that I don't remember, so I want to reread this at some point. Okay. Ow. Let's before we move on to the next dark manga that I read, let's check what you guys are saying. His son completed the series with Hunters of Dune and Sandworms of Dune. So Frank Herbert wrote the first 6. Book 4, God Emperor of Dune, is my favorite sci-fi book of all time. Oh, nice. Cool. Are those 2 omnibuses complete collection, or is it more of a best of sort of thing? I think you're referring to Devilman. No, this both of these volumes, so there's this volume and the second volume, are the complete Devilman series, along with Shin Devilman, which is like the short stories in between. So you're not just getting the best of with this, you're getting the full comprehensive series. Obviously, there's spin-offs like Devilman versus Hades and Devilman Grimoire, but they're completely separate. And I know there's like Lady Devilman, which I believe is a sequel to this. But this is the very first, the OG original, in its entirety. So it's not like Lupin the Third, where it's just like a best of or something like that. So definitely worth getting. Yeah, I really want to see the new film, Zach, the Dune film. Really, really want to see that, but I haven't seen it yet, just because I want to read the books first. Kavoth, hey, good to see you around. Happy New Year to you too, bud. Mango Reader, nice to see you around, man. I'm missing your streams, man. I'm missing your content. I enjoy your streams. I know you're probably busy though. Devilman versus Hades is decent. Yeah, I heard. I think one of them is actually by either written by Go Nagai. It's not by like another author or something, isn't it? I'm not too sure. Anyway, moving on. So then, let's go with my phone. The next dark series that's on this list, which is sort of in the same vein as Devilman, I guess you could say, certainly by a master of horror, and that is The Drifting Classroom by Kazuo Umezu. One of 3 volumes. And this was an absolute ride. This was a trip. I loved this from page 1 up until the last page. It is so fun. It's just so ludicrous. It's basically it takes a very simple sort of idea and just runs with it. And it's basically an entire school, an elementary school, a primary school, I guess, if you live in the UK. An elementary school, the entire building and its sort of surrounding foundations are transported to a different world. And all the kids are inside it. Nobody knows why it's happened, how it's happened. All of these kids and the teachers inside are transported along with the entire building and the surrounding school grounds to a completely void dimension that is just a desolate wasteland. And it deals with the utter confusion and panic that would ensue if this happened. It's just crazy. It is Lord of the Flies on crack. It is so brutal, and it's basically a 3-volume, I guess, I believe 11 volumes in the singles, an 11-volume battle for survival, battling their own sanity, battling starvation, battling the monsters that live in this desolate wasteland, and all the while trying to solve exactly what is happening to them and how on earth they're going to get back. Because a lot of these kids, the oldest kids in this manga are like 9-10 years old, and then you've got like the preschoolers, like the kindergartners, where they're like they're 3 years old, and they're faced with incomprehensible odds of survival, and none of them have got any survival experience. They're just normal school kids. The ironic thing as well is, the funny thing is that the first ones to go insane and this isn't really a spoiler because it sort of happens in the first volume. It's all the adults go crazy first, and they start rioting and killing each other. So the children really truly are left to fend for themselves, even without the adults. So the majority of the manga, the kids are just by themselves. And similarly with, if you've read like Lord of the Flies, different classes form different factions, and they try and set up sort of a system of democracy where there's like a ruling sort of government, because they need some sort of law and order. They've got dwindling supplies. They only have the food that is available in their their school cafeteria. So, and the water, they've got like a little swimming pool, like in this void dimension that they go to. It doesn't rain. There's no sort of weather or anything. It's just a dry, desolate wasteland. So time is of the essence. So I cannot sing the praises of this manga enough. It is just such a trip. It's so fun, and it's not frightened to sort of delve into complete far-fetchedness. I mean, there's a point in this manga. There's so many things that just aren't explained at all, but it's okay. It's kind of okay. As an example, when they're sort of surveying the school grounds to see like what's available, what the resources that they can sort of pool together, they just randomly come across a handgun in Japan in a school, and it's never explained why that handgun was there, but the handgun becomes sort of an important plot point and a sort of tool for seizing power. So it is just there just to sort of progress that element of the story, but there's no explanation as to why it's there in the first place. It's just got these really stupid, far-fetched moments that just make it even more fun. And over the course of the manga, you sort of learn little bits of how potentially they got there. Not necessarily how they got there, but what they can do to sort of. In fact, no, I won't spoil. It would be a massive spoiler if I said that. I'm trying to put it in a way that doesn't spoil it. There are. But at the time that this is happening, obviously back in their world, you've got like the parents of the kids who have disappeared trying to figure out where their kids have gone, so that there's that element to it as well. I won't say any more on that because it will just spoil it, and I don't want to do that for you. But it does have a really nice assortment of likable heroic characters and dastardly villains, children and adult alike, that just make this a really, really fun ride. The artwork has this sort of like dated but whimsical style to it, where each character just like almost everyone looks really cartoony. Like the way they run is just like really goofy. Like you can kind of maybe see there, like they all run in this like really goofy sort of way. It gives this impression of like almost like a I don't know, like a Peanuts magazine or something, like a Peanuts strip, but in long form almost. And all of the kids are just so dramatic. Like everyone's like everyone has got their emotions turned up to 11. Everyone's reactions are like really, really sort of absurd and just tuned up to the max. There's a particular really funny sort of story, which is like unintentionally funny, I suppose, where they're trying to hide from this monster, and the strategy that they find is that everyone should just act like furniture, and there's this scene with the main character like mentally turning into a chair just to avoid being seen by this monster, and it's so unintentionally hilarious, and it's just full of those sort of moments. Like the drama in it is also sort of unintentionally funny, but the horror elements, the sort of predicament that they're in are genuinely terrifying. And like I said, similarly with Devilman, and I don't know if this was just a staple of manga at that time, but life is so finite. Death is just around the corner for any character. There's so much death in this, and one thing that's always been controversial, in any sort of media, whether that be movies or comics, is dealing with death and children. Like that's always been sort of a no-go when it comes to sort of storytelling, especially when you're aiming it at a younger demographic, which this is a shonen aimed at adolescents or younger. so many kids die in this, and it's like, wow. So not only is it kind of funny in certain parts, like morbidly funny, but at the same time, it's really, you know, you care for these characters. You don't want anyone to die, and a lot of the kids are so sweet. You know, there's lots of sort of self-sacrifice, and you know, things like that. Cults, like I said, different factions splintering off. The sort of politics that come from the mind of children in this is really, really nice. It's put together really well. So I would highly recommend these, particularly in these beautiful hardcover collections from Viz. Really, really enjoyed this. You know, what does it say on the back even? Out of nowhere, an entire school vanishes, leaving nothing but a hole in the ground. While parents mourn, the authorities investigate. The students and the teachers find themselves not dead, but stranded in a terrifying wasteland where they must fight to survive. And that's basically it. Nothing more and nothing less. It's just different sort of trials and tribulations that they have to come across. Like if it's not starvation, then it's disease. At one point, you know, they have to fight off the plague because different students like contract the plague. You know, they don't have like access to like medicine and hospitals and healthcare and things like that. So, you know, they have to deal with like dehydration. There's so much shit that's thrown at these kids that they have to deal with, and it's brutal. It's a really brutal series. Okay. Let's have a look at the comments before I move on. I've got 4 more things left to talk about, so let's try to get those bashed out in the next half an hour. Fairy Tale, hey, hello, thanks for joining. Yeah, hopefully soon, Mango. I miss your content, man. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoy mine. The Drifting Classroom sounds really cool. Oh man, it is really good, really good. I think we might be getting even more of his manga in English later this year. Yeah, Orochi Blood. I think we are getting in that. I mean, I believe that was printed in the early 2000s, maybe. So this is going to be a reprint of that, a re-release of that. I've got that on my wish list. Very enjoyable stream. Thank you, Fairy Tale. Really, I'm glad you're enjoying. I feel a lot more talkative in this stream than I have done in my previous stream. So, and that's because I'm talking about series that I genuinely love. I find it difficult to talk about series that I'm just kind of okay about, because it's not really that much to talk about, I feel. Yeah, I believe they are releasing Orochi in perfect editions. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked about that. Shonen ranges from 12 to 18. Yeah, so it's quite a range of stories that can be told. Absolutely, it's basically like our young adult books, but gendered. Yeah, which, I mean, I guess it's sort of like an archaic legacy of how their comic books are structured, but I don't think there's really any sort of need for demographics to be gendered anymore. There's so much overflow from, you know, like Josei and Seinen, for instance, that could appeal really to anyone. So yeah, that's just my take on it, though. All right, before I continue, I'm gonna have another drink. Okay. The next 2 series I'll talk about are 2 Gekiga series that I've included on this list. Gekiga being alternative indie comics in Japan, mostly published through independent magazines in like the 60s and 70s. First one I'll talk about is The Sky is Blue with a Single Cloud by Kuniko Sarita. It's a series of her short stories published from the late 60s up until the mid 80s, before her untimely death. And this is basically a collection of her best works, published mostly in Garo magazine, which is like an alternative indie magazine that runs in Japan. Very little sort of editorial interference, so authors who publish in that magazine have a lot of sort of creative freedom to sort of really experiment. It's experimentation in graphic sequential storytelling, very abstract, but this one particularly very enjoyable. This is the only collection of manga by Kuniko Sarita that we have in English, unfortunately. I mean, like I said, her career was short-lived. She died in her early 30s of lupus, and the short stories in this collection, basically, many of them are an allegory for her sort of coming to terms with, her fatality, her life. I mean, the latter stories of this collection, from what I recall, I mean, there's a beautiful essay, a fantastic essay in the back by Ryan Holmberg. Some of the latter stories in this were made after she had a terminal diagnosis, so they're very dark, very visceral, and quite sad. Quite sad, in fact. The opening story is like a punch in the face, and it's basically about a psychopath who wants to rid the world of evil. So he kills as many sort of people who he deems evil as possible, because he thinks he's doing a virtuous thing. He thinks he's doing the world a favor by killing these evil people. And then eventually, when he dies, he goes to hell, and he's distraught. Why am I in hell? I've been doing the world a service. I've been killing evil people, people who I deem evil, people who I know are evil. Why have I come to hell? And the devil says, well, yeah, you've been killing evil people, but now hell is flooded with evil. So I'm sending you back to earth, so you can. Well, in fact, no. When he gets to, I've got this wrong actually. When he gets to hell, he starts killing again. He kills all the evil that's in hell, and then the devil's like, well, I'm going to send you back up to earth so you can kill them all again. And he's just in this endless cycle. So he realizes at the end of the short story that, oh my god, how long have I been in this cycle? How am I going to break this cycle? It's a gut punch. It's a really good opener. And then the rest of the stories are sort of some of them are like self-inserts where the author has like sort of inserted a character that is maybe her or maybe not her. Some of them are very related to the time and place. The creative landscape that existed in sort of urban metropolitan Japan at the time that they were created in the 1960s. So a lot of them like have references to the sort of bohemian culture, that younger creatives were involved in at the time. Like sort of jazz clubs and just really cool sort of like abstract activities. Student protests is something that features heavily in some of the stories, which the essay thankfully gives a lot of context to. But I do feel it's more the abstract stories that are the strength in this. A lot of them are allegorical, about Sarita's dwindling life, her experience as a female creator in a male-dominated industry. One thing that really warmed me to her stories and her as an author is how sassy she was. She was very much a lone enigma in a very masculine dominated environment, and faced, unfortunately, a lot of misogyny and sexism towards from her peers, which unfortunately limited her exposure, and she unfortunately she died not being celebrated as much as she should have. And you can see in her manga just like how rebellious and forthright she was in her storytelling, in a time where she was expected just to create girly shoujo manga. In fact, she was actually told, maybe it'd be better just doing some love stories, for a shoujo magazine. She's so condescending, because she just had an amazing flair for sort of edgy, cool characters. and storytelling. You know, her stories are witty and funny. You know, there's a lot of social commentary. Particularly one about a woman who's like a woman who lives in the medieval period who I'm just having a look at it now. It's a young woman living in medieval times who's on death row. She's in prison for unknown reasons, and her only solace is a priest who comes to see her to offer sort of words of wisdom and solace. She knows she's innocent for whatever crimes have been placed against her, and so does the priest who comes to see her. But ultimately, the priest is unable to save her, and she ends up getting executed, but rebels until the very end. And it's basically about you could say it's like an allegory of her peers the failure of her peers and editors around her that impeded her success. I loved it. It was each story had its own sort of character and elements towards it that made it just so appealing, and it just made me wanted more. I crave more of this artist's work, and I truly hope we get to see more. I mean, I don't think she's got a very expansive biography anyway, because obviously she had she died young, but what she left us with was some of this stuff is absolute gold. I mean, it's just so appealing to look at. Some of the panels are so striking. She just the way she sort of renders characters and landscapes on the page are just so it's just beautiful. The graphic quality of it, the graphic design of it is just so good. She's clearly very talented, very talented. Let's try find some more nice pages, ones hopefully that aren't explicit in any way. There's one particular that I'm really looking. Here's another really cool one. But yeah, just absolutely fantastic manga. Again, very experimental, but very much worth the read. An underappreciated author who died too soon, and I think with that knowledge, I guess maybe I have a bias towards it because it makes me appreciate it more, knowing that it's an author who created such appealing stories, against the current. Her trajectory in life was limited by virtue of her being a woman. So I think that extra element to it makes me appreciate it more because she created such good stories against the current, and was able to do that. I just have a profound respect for this. So The Sky is Blue with a Single Cloud, heavily recommend. Okay, let's have a look. Comments. Yeah, you've been waiting for the Gekka talk. Got that one on your recommended. Yeah, I remember when you got that, Puffin. I'm glad you got it. Sounds vaguely like the plot of Death Note. Hello, Mutton. Not like Japan has changed much since. They're still quite sexist over there, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, it's a very progressive society, but I guess that sort of Bushido culture still pervades. I mean, I recently read a manga that's dealt heavily with the sort of station of women even in modern society still, and it's still very rigid. By no means am I an expert in Japanese society, so I can't really say. Moving on. The next one, another Gekka one that's a lot more sort of relaxed, and that's The Man Without Talent. Okay, this one published by New York Review Comics. This is an autobiographical work about the guy on the cover there, who is very smart. He's got really good sort of artistic business acumen, but he suffers with unrelenting apathy. He's just so unmotivated and apathetic. And the only thing that he's really good at is creating stories, creating manga. But because manga is so difficult, being a manga author is difficult. It's very taxing. He's altogether abandoned it, and he's trying to, it's different stories of him trying different business ventures and utterly failing at them. Very niche sort of hobbies that he tries turning into a business, and he either stumbles upon something that was really sort of financially viable. For instance, there's a story that deals with him sort of peddling vintage and antique cameras, but doesn't really make much success with that. But the funniest one is and sort of the overarching plot of him collecting stones, literally just like stones that have aesthetic appeal. They look nice. But it turns out he was 10 years too late, because there was a trend like 10 years before the story set, where stones for like artistic quality were really popular, and that trend died down, and he was just late on the train. So it's basically him picking up different hobbies to try and turn a profit, and he's so pig-headed and so out of the loop, and out of it. Just there's just no self-awareness at all, with how much he's failing. And the ones who are suffering are his wife and his child. His long-suffering wife is ever present, telling him how just useless he is, and just go back to creating manga. So it's this funny little story about, and I guess from the actual author, like Yoshihiro Suge, I guess he's sort of self-deprecating manga. He has written this about himself. I mean, this character here isn't actually Yoshihiro Suge. It's more of like a supplantation of himself in a fictional character. But all of the sort of hallmarks of Yoshihiro Suge as a person are there. So I guess the manga it's very self-deprecating, because I guess the author now does indeed realize that he was foolish to ever try and take on these ventures. I mean, Yoshihiro Suge really did try and get into the business of of selling vintage cameras. And there's even a photo on the back of him with just like loads of vintage cameras, and it's like, man, come on, man. So it's funny. It's really, really funny. It's, if you like that sort of dry, muted humor, very satirical sort of dry humor. I guess you could say like blue humor. It's not like laugh out loud funny. It's more like cringeworthy and embarrassment. Like you get a lot of secondhand embarrassment from this, because you just, like, I mean, I found myself like almost screaming at the page, like, "Oh my god, you're so stupid! Just do something else. You're not winning at this." And he's so stubborn. Like he'll just sit there for days in the rain, like under a little sheet, like with like a pile of rocks with prices on them, and like he'll see like one person and won't sell anything at all. But he keeps saying like, maybe tomorrow, and his son's like, "But Dad, I'm hungry." It's like, Jesus Christ, man. This guy is such dead weight. Like I found myself so angry at him because he was just so stubborn. But even from that perspective, it's kind of motivating, because I guess, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I guess everyone maybe goes through those sort of periods of absence, and I guess absence of motivation and apathy, where you just don't really want to do anything. I mean, especially now in the last couple of years that we've had, since the outbreak of the the virus that must not be named. I can only speak for myself again, but I haven't really done much in this last 2 years, and I haven't really had much motivation to create content. So reading something like this, it's almost like staring at a mirror, to a certain degree, because it's like, oh man, I don't want to be this guy. And I guess anybody reading this may feel the same way, because like I said, we've all sort of experienced that lack of motivation at one point or another in our lives. So it very much, for me, it was like, oh man, after I read this, I was like, I'm going to go to the gym. I want to go work out. I'm going to go for a walk. And I started hiking, as a result of reading this. I got back into hiking just because I was like, oh man, God, I don't want to turn into this guy. So it was funny. It was funny in that regard, and sort of shone a magnifying glass on the apathy that we all experience at one point or another in our lives. So for that, it was really entertaining, and I'm looking forward to reading more of his works. And it was just something really different, something really idiosyncratic, something you wouldn't expect to read a story about a guy who just doesn't want to do anything. He just wants the easy path in life. He wants little effort with big payoff, and there's no such thing as that. If you want to succeed, if you want to be financially successful, there is a hard grind to that. Unless you were born into royalty, unless you're part of the 1%, there is a hard grind, and this guy just doesn't want to accept that. He wants just the highest payoff with the least amount of effort, and it's foolish. It's foolhardy and idiotic, and that's why it's so funny. So, highly recommend The Man Without Talent. Yeah, so this video's going along. Okay, 2 more to get through. I'll try not to talk too much about either of these, even though I love them both. So the next one is Opus, Satoshi Kon's Opus, by Dark Horse. This was not finished. This is an unfinished manga, obviously due to his timely death. But the reason why it was unfinished is because he shifted from creating manga to anime. I mean, this has been incomplete since the mid-90s, and that's just on account of him, becoming an anime director. But it's basically this really sort of meta, multi-layered story about an author who, in order to end his serialization of this popular manga that he's got publishing in a magazine, he decides to kill off one of the main characters. But the main character in the series doesn't want to die. So the author gets sucked into the series by this character who's supposed to be killed off. It's like, well, what the hell are you doing? You're not going to kill me off. I don't want to get killed off. Write a better ending for me, please. I've been in this manga for God knows how long, and you're just going to kill me off. You need to write a better ending for me. So this is really, I mean, if you've seen anything by Satoshi Kon, particularly something like Paprika, then he's very meta in the literal sense of the word. It's very multi-layered. There's multiple realities that kind of stack upon each other and interweave, and it's written so cleverly. And how the author sort of experiences the world that he's created, the dangers of that world that he's created, and how much of a fish out of water he is when put into that world. It's just so clever. And even the ending, I mean, without spoiling it, obviously the manga doesn't have an ending. I mean, it is very much just rough drafts and sketches that were recovered after Satoshi Kon passed away. But it does have this sort of it does have a satisfying ending for the ending that we got, and it's almost like a punchline, because obviously Satoshi Kon knew at the time that it wasn't going to, the series was going on hiatus, and he gave it sort of like this sort of comedic ending, like a to be continued sort of thing. I won't spoil it, specifically, but the main core of the manga, like all the action and the sort of drifting in between worlds and interacting with your own creations and the world that the author gets sucked into, it's only real to him in the sort of main panels that he drew. Like there's parts of the manga where he goes to parts of the world which are like literally like in the background of the panels, so like the world becomes like really sketchy and abstract, and the background characters are literally just like people with like crosses on their faces. it's done really cleverly and really funny. So even though it's not complete, I would still highly recommend this just for what it is. I mean, this for me was a name by. I'm a big fan of Satoshi Kon's films, and I had to read a manga by him, and this did not disappoint. I absolutely loved it. I mean, it is bittersweet. It's very bittersweet, in fact, if not sad that it didn't get an ending. And I have actually just finished reading Seraphim, which was his collaboration with Mamoru Oshii, which doesn't have a conclusive ending at all. It ends very abruptly. Not like this one, though. I mean, it does have an abrupt ending, but like I said, it's more of like a tongue-in-cheek sort of ending where Satoshi Kon like actually enters the manga himself, and like has like a sort of like dialogue with himself as a character, and then the other characters. Again, it's just really multi-layered. There's like about 4 or 5 different realities in this that stack upon each other. And it's just really enjoyable. I mean, the main story of the manga that's within this manga is interesting enough. But then having that story interweave with the reality, like the real reality, I guess, is just really, really interesting. So for that, I would definitely recommend Satoshi Kon's Opus. Whew. God, that was difficult to get through. Okay, I've got one more thing to get through. Arguably, probably my favorite of everything that I've read, maybe out of these top 10. I'm not too sure. Puffin sounds like a good introduction to more of his books since it's self-contained. Yeah, I'd say so. Opus reminds me of a series of books I read as a child called Inkheart. Cool. Okay, the last thing. How could I have a top 10 list without talking about Taya Matsumoto? So Sunny by Taya Matsumoto is my absolute favorite out of the works of his that I've read so far. This was such a heart-wrencher. And again, it is semi-autobiographical. Taya Matsumoto grew up in an orphanage. He was an orphan. And this story is about kids growing up in an orphanage in circa 1970s. And there's no real sort of central character, but I guess if you could choose a central character, then it's this guy on the cover, Haru, the white-haired kid, who may be the self-insert. It might be Taya Matsumoto, might not be, not too sure. But he's this sort of aggressive but nice, sweet kid. Really aggressive just because he's, well, any kid who's been abandoned, surely, must sort of grow sort of some kind of defense. And his defense is that he's just sort of bratty. Maybe not bratty. He's just a naughty kid. He's just naughty, but not like insufferably naughty. He's just, yeah, that kid's naughty, but I can understand why he's naughty. That kind of thing. And he is very, very sweet. And it basically it's about an orphanage called Star Kids Home that has just a random hodgepodge assortment of like different kids. You've got Haru, you've got some other kids, girls and boys that are around similar age. You've got a couple of toddlers. You've got an older man who's got some kind of mental disability. And then you've got the like the matrons and the patrons of the orphanage who basically run the place. And there's no central story. It very much just depicts what life in an orphanage is like. The different things that the kids have to do to sort of keep themselves stimulated, occupied. I mean, because it's another manga that deals with adolescence, being a child, which Taya Matsumoto was arguably a genius at. This one by far has to be his most heartfelt, as it's very real to him. And it's, all of these kids live in this orphanage and they all hang out in this derelict car that's like in the garden behind the orphanage called the Sunny. It's I think it's a Fiat Sunny or I can't remember the make of the car, but it's basically this car that they all hang out in, and the car serves as like a metaphor for them having their lives halted because they're in a car, they want to move, they want to progress, but they can't because it's broken down, which I guess is an allegory for what their childhoods have become. They don't have the parents to guide them through life. Their lives have just halted and they're stuck here. So the play around in this car, make believe, like Haru, thinks of himself as like this sort of cool James Bond character who wears sunglasses, and he likes sort of playing around in the car. The girls play in the car and pretend it's like a rocket ship, things like that. Just it's a really nice look at what it means to be a child. Still sort of experiencing childhood, but again in the face of adversity, in the face of abandonment. A lot of the kids have abandonment issues. Either some of the kids are there because their parents have died or the parents are sick. Other kids are there because they've been surrendered to the orphanage because the parents have abandoned them. There's another kid, really, really awful side. When I say awful side story, I don't mean it's bad as in it's badly written, but awful in that it's awful what the character goes through. There's another kid who it's hinted that should come from a family that like sexually abused her. And considering as well that these are likely Taya Matsumoto's real life experiences, obviously he grew up in that orphanage, in an orphanage, and would have had peers as well that he knew. A lot of these stories may come from the experiences of other kids that he grew up with, and it's just so sad, especially Haru, whose mum basically abandoned him, and she's got like no maternal instinct at all, and just she interacts with him so coldly, but he's just yearning for some kind of affection, which is obviously why he lashes out so much. So it deals with these problemed kids that they're all really sweet, to a certain degree, each individually, and it's just so unfortunate that they're all in this situation. I myself have a couple of friends. I have a friend who was brought up in the care system here in the UK, and it's not a good system. It's not a good system at all, and I would imagine it's the same for many other countries. I don't know, but this manga is an entire story which encapsulates the old saying of every child deserves a parent, but not every parent deserves a child. And it's told so delicately and sweetly, and pacing is really nice. This is another one of the really nice, sweet characters, Megumu, who is probably my favorite character in the series. Actually, she's so sweet. The artwork is obviously staggeringly beautiful. You can see the Sunny on the back cover there. And this manga just really touched my heart. It's one of those real tearjerkers, as it's just it really focuses on the kids. I mean, like I said, Taya Matsumoto is a genius when it comes to writing stories about children, and this one by far is his most heartfelt. So yeah, I cannot recommend Sunny anymore. And I would probably say out of the 10 manga that I've talked about today, this one is the most heartfelt, the most emotional, probably my favorite, and this is by far one of my favorite series of all time. And I may do a separate review on it, as I don't want to talk about too long, as this video is already an hour and a half long. Jesus, I only wanted this to be an hour. Oh well. Okay, I think that's going to wrap it up. So just to summarize, obviously I've just talked about Sunny. Satoshi Kon's opus, The Man Without Talent. The Sky is Blue with a Single Cloud. The Drifting Classroom. Devilman. A Distant Neighborhood. Oops. Real. Knights of Sidonia. And last but not least, Pikachu. So if you're interested in reading any of these, I mean, I would recommend every single one of these, in all honesty. Thank you for sticking around. Another long one. But if you've read any of these, please, by all means, let me know what your thoughts on any of them are. If there's anybody watching this after it's aired, then I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these series that I've read, or put your own top 10 series that you read last year in the comments. For those who are still currently watching, thank you so much. Thanks for your patience while I got through this. And well, yeah, Happy New Year, and I'll see you when I see you. See you later.